African kings, princes, and potentates. His Excellency, the Chairperson of the African Union Commission, Your Excellencies, the Chairpersons for the sub-regional economic communities within North, South, East, West, and Central Africa, governors of African national central banks, my fellow Africans across the continent and throughout the sixth region, friends and lovers of Africa, members of the investment community, political and economic juggernauts, former colonizers and related institutions, greetings to you one and all. And of course, for those of you located in diverse language or linguistic areas, of course, I say to you, Guten Tag, Ohio gozaimasu, Bonjour, Merhaba, Salam alaikum. To those of you in Southern Africa, Sal Bonane, and once again, welcome to you each and every one. During the first half of H1 2025, from January to June, the process of African regional and continental integration achieved a fundamental paradigm shift as measured in major economic milestones, policies, and geopolitical advances. In my capacity as chairman of the Sixth Region and governor of the African Diaspora Central Bank, I am pleased to give this short H1 market update, which will focus exclusively on the most relevant economic investment measures, as well as those transformative political steps taken at the level of region and continent within the new African economy. The major theme for the African Union in 2025 is 2025, Year of Reparations, Justice for Africans and People of African Descent through Reparations. Consequently, this theme plays a dominant role in the formulation of Sixth Region regulation policies and the posture of the diaspora's engagement across all sectors of the economy. The theme comes with very real short to mid-term social, economic, and political implications, including but not limited to a permanent shift in the global financial framework, a permanent change in African geopolitical relations, as well as a permanent change in the African movement of goods, commodities, and other resources. These implications should be welcomed and embraced by all as part of Africa's new and transformative presence in climate action, industrialization, and poverty eradication. H1 opened with the African Union Summit 38th Ordinary Session held from January 14th through February 16th, 2025. The summit witnessed the election of Djibouti's Foreign Minister, Mahmoud Ali Yusuf, as leader of the AU Commission, assuming the office of chairperson for the next 4 years. The Sixth Region, of course, welcomes His Excellency to the post and applauds the very robust policies, public statements, and continental integration efforts already pursued by his office in H1. Of course, in coming to terms with some of the obvious shortcomings within the AU, we remain particularly mindful of the alarms raised by former AU Chairman Moussa Faki as it relates to the fact that the AU depends on external donors for some 70% of its funding, which constitutes an existential conflict of interest for the AU, and of course has hindered its ability to implement many of the dynamic policies which it does indeed legislate. Fortunately, the recent statements made by Chairman Yusuf towards the implementation of immediate financial reform within both the African financial system and global financial system will help to mitigate those internal conflicts of interest as the AU develops in cooperation with the Sixth Region. The African Diaspora Central Bank, in its capacity as regional monetary authority and issuer of Africa's global currency, takes a leadership role in the consolidation of intra-African trade. And during H1, we continued our currency integration and investment obligations towards the development of Africa's new economy. Consequently, the H1 market update begins with a highlight on the macro recapitalization of the African economy towards Agenda 2063 and under the sixth region framework from 2025 through 2063. Under the recapitalization framework, we begin with a time horizon of 38 years that has already started in 2025 and continues to 2063. The recapitalization outlook considers the development needs of the continent with a population of 1.4 billion people. And of course, it defines the needs as relating to the material trappings of a modern society, with access to new technologies, computer innovations, a stable economy, and a predictable flow of electricity to ensure Africa's successful economic activities. In this context, the sixth region defines the minimum capacity for Africa's long-term economic development and comfort to be measured in the successful delivery of energy and at a distribution ratio of some 6,000 kilowatt hours per capita. This reflects economic consumption comparable to what is currently enjoyed in many developed countries and economies, and reflects the bare minimum requirement for productive usage of computer systems, phones, air conditioning, industry, and other such consumptive social activities. Using this measured capacity of 6,000 kilowatt hours per person, ADCB sees the recapitalization of the African economy at a value of some 2.1 trillion Lumi. And of course, with the monetary saturation being set to a benchmark of 25 years, this reflects a discount of 35% or 13 years under the 2025 through 2063 period. For those of you not yet familiar with our money valuation under the AKL Lumi system, 2.1 trillion reflects a parity value of some 58.3 trillion US dollars, being just over twice the economic size of the United States with its comparatively small population of 340 million people. The integrity and stability of Lumi as regional money can be transparently measured from the time of its underwriting in the Bank of Accompong in 2015, when one Lumi had a value of some $10, and then, of course, the subsequent acquisition of the monetary unit by the African Diaspora Central Bank in 2021, where it was acquired at a value of 15.96. And of course, finally, we look at the secondary market value of Lumi today, where it stands at a value of some $27.80. If Lumi were treated in its classic form as a bearer bond, Lumi currency gain of some $17.80 would reflect a return on investment of 178% at an annualized rate of return of some 10.68%. This is a result of ADCB's return to classic banking fundamentals as the foundation of Africa's economic transformation, whereby money has a clear intrinsic value. In the case of Lumi, of course, that value is defined by its underwriting with 100 kilowatt hours of solar energy and other pari passu clean energy, as well as its peg to 4 grains of gold. The recapitalization of Lumi 2.1 trillion now allows the continent to make bold development policies with trade in local currencies and offers African businesses across every sector a framework for local liquidity and the security of long-term capital without excessive interest rates. The current flow of foreign direct investment at the value of some 97 billion per annum constitutes only 4.1%, 15% rather, or 2.4 trillion of the overall investment period from 2025 through 2063. For this reason, third-party currencies such as the United States dollar, the euro, Chinese renminbi, Japanese yen, and British pound sterling, which are all collectively less than 6% of the total regional investment framework, are treated in the regional investment framework as being negligible. These currencies will not be referred to in the overall regional investment framework until their partnership contribution is greater than 6% of the continental development policy. Of course, as regional policy maker, ECO6 has established the exchange rate mechanism for global climate action, poverty eradication, and sustainable development. Participation in the exchange rate mechanism by third party constitutes not only an obligation to all third-party transactions with Africa, but also integrates third-party currencies into meaningful climate action and ensures intrinsic value to African trade finance. The voluntary participation in the ERM by members of the international community in Europe, North America, Asia, and around the world signifies your commitment to supporting the sixth region and Africa during this new economic epoch. And of course, those who fail to voluntarily participate will unfortunately find themselves subjected to regional fines and other corrective economic measures for the legislative documentation. This includes a tariff of 100% on third-party currencies. As we look to the H1 update, it focuses predominantly on two major recapitalization policies, one within North America and the other within the Caribbean, where in North America and the Caribbean, we have a substantive diaspora constituency. Starting in North America, we look to Africville at Nova Scotia in America. We saw the reestablishment of Africville during Black History Month on February 13th, 2025. At that time, Africville was initially endowed with AKL Lumi 15 billion. However, as we further integrate the US diaspora constituency, we were obliged to increase it from 15 billion to 150 billion during the period 2025 through 2063. In terms of understanding the importance of Africville as a port and base, Africville at Nova Scotia builds on the legacy of the African diaspora as partners and primary founders in both the First Charter of Virginia, 1606, and the Royal Charter of Nova Scotia, 1621, the two of which act as the foundations for what is modern day known as the USA and Canada. Of course, the financial allotment and endowment to Africville, which supports the constituency of some 56 million people in the United States, and of course, another 1.5 million in Canada, will serve as a key port to facilitate knowledge transfer, business development, research and development in new technologies, and tourism between the sixth region and the continent, and of course, utilizing Africville as a key base and port for trade between the sixth region, North America, and continental Africa. The second endowment goes to the Caribbean, where in February 21st, 2025, also during Black History Month, we saw an endowment of some 10 billion being allocated to the Caribbean region. This endowment will facilitate the advance of regional trade and development, provide liquidity for local businesses, as well as become a tool within the process of industrial knowledge transfer, water preservation, new technologies, mining and environmental protection, tourism, organic agriculture, cultural exchange, and all various industries and sectors that the constituency in the Caribbean seeks to develop as part of its trade framework with continental Africa. Based upon the significant implications with our engagement in North America on the one hand, and our engagement with the Caribbean on the other hand, we give a clear guidance and market recommendations towards the impact and implications in H2, and of course, how this will evolve over the course of 2025 through 2063. First and foremost, H2 will see the continuation of diaspora endowments with a particular focus on the diaspora constituency in Central America, the diaspora constituency in South America, as well as those in Europe and in Britain. Policies will be formulated and, of course, hopefully disseminated before the end of Q3 in H2. In terms of key recommendations, we look firstly to our recommendations for African regional and national institutions. We encourage and indeed call for the immediate familiarization and integration of AKL Lumi amongst all African regional and national institutional bodies. We also call for our partner institutions across the continent to strengthen their cooperative activities with diaspora communities within their local area. And of course, pertaining to local businesses across the continent and their engagement within the African Continental Free Trade Area, we continue to encourage the increase of supply chain of all goods and services using African vendors across all regions. And of course, recognizing that the diaspora as sixth region and constituency is available for diverse knowledge transfer in all segmentations. As it relates to our constituency of diaspora throughout the sixth region, as the issue of reparations begins to unfold and our constituency is given allocations to compensate for the last 400 years, we encourage all members of the sixth region to immediately familiarize themselves with AKL Lumi and begin its integration process within their local economic activities. This includes developing local business strategies that integrate the engagement and wealth creation processes with continental Africa. We also advise and encourage the integration of African reparations as a tool and instrument to eliminate poverty and economic injustice within your local communities. In this regard, I talk particularly and specifically to the diaspora constituency in the United States, in locations ranging as diverse from Michigan to Florida to California, or our diaspora constituency in Canada, in communities like Toronto and Quebec, that we begin to immediately integrate AKL Lumi as part of the local transactional framework and of course ensure that our reparations are used to eliminate the adverse economic circumstances throughout all of our communities in North America. And this is and will be equally applicable to the allocations in H2 in Europe, Britain, and throughout Eurasia. As it relates to the international community, we equally encourage all members of the international community to immediately familiarize yourself and begin to integrate AKL Lumi. We encourage you to improve your relationship with the 6th region, with the diaspora constituency surrounding you. And of course, at the business level, we encourage all market participants to prepare for the immediate transition to local African processing of raw materials before export. As raw materials begin to be processed on the continent, one should also prepare for cancellation of long-term raw material supply chain agreements with national bodies, as those raw materials will and must be processed locally. And of course, to prepare for an increased partnership with your local diaspora businesses. We encourage you to be prepared for a new African dynamic in which the complete elimination of poverty within the African family is not only a slogan that is given in statements by the United Nations and various institutions that have worked very sincerely and put a great level towards the topic of poverty eradication. But we now transition to a period where that thing called tomorrow has become today, and the topic of poverty eradication becomes a reality for today. This type of economic transformation coming from Africa has indeed not been witnessed in the last 400 years. And of course, it will have resistance by members of the international community. Notwithstanding, the development will occur on the continent, and we can only extend our friends to you, our hand to you, in a new era of friendship, economic development, and cooperation that sees a win-win dynamic between the global community and continental Africa, with the diaspora playing a key role in the integration framework, and of course, the African family standing on its own 2 feet, no longer as a charity or location for aid, but as a serious partner on the international stage. We welcome you to this new era of Africa's economic development. Thank you.